So what did it feel like to show up in bustling Cambridge, Massachusetts from Saskatoon?
Yeah, it was an eye-opener. All kinds of things I'd never really seen before. It was I got there and like, it was this transition to suddenly being in a place where like almost everyone is smarter and more knowledgeable about the subject than I am. So that was, that lit a fire under me. had to try and catch up.
But you must have caught up pretty soon because you met Robert Morris, because you were in like getting your PhDs at the same time, right?
Yeah, we had the same advisor and our offices weren't that far from each other.
Paul had started Viaweb and he was good friends with Robert, and he asked Robert, who's the best programmer in your program? And he said you. So you must have caught up very quickly.
I guess so.
Very modest. You're very modest, Trevor.
I mean, I was good at the practical stuff, and it was the theory that I felt insecure about because I'd sort of studied computer engineering rather than computer science. So I could program, but they would keep talking about these complicated theory things that took me a while to catch up on.
Well, Paul described you as basically a programming monster doing prodigious feats of programming, which now that I know you, I believe. But do you remember when you were with Robert in the program and he said, hey, I'm working on this startup? Do you remember getting introduced to Paul and the whole Viaweb thing?
Yeah. So he introduced me to Paul, and Paul explained this idea that lots of people would want to sell things on the internet, which I believed because, this was late 94. Amazon sort of existed. There were a couple of other bookstores on the web. I just loved it because I could order any book I wanted if I just knew the title, instead of whatever might be available at the campus bookstore. So I liked the idea of there being, more things for sale on the internet. And I believed the idea that, every catalog company would eventually need to be on the internet, which was a bold idea in 1994.
Yeah, and you probably dealt with your fair share of catalogs being like an electrical engineer, right? Wasn't everything, didn't you have huge catalogs?
Well, yeah, I mean, in Saskatoon, there was not a retail store for computers or electronics. I would order stuff from DigiKey existed then in the 80s. That's still the standard place to buy electronics components. But at the time, it was like in the back of a magazine, there'd be this page with a form to fill out for quantity and price and whatever, and you'd send it in with a credit card, with my dad's credit card number, and so yeah, being able to order stuff on the internet seemed great.
I'm dying to know what your first meeting with Paul was like. What did you think of him? What was he like? What stage was Viaweb at?
Well, what actually got me interested in it was that it was a software business that didn't require writing Windows software and putting it in a box and shipping it with version numbers. So kids these days don't know how horrible that was, but in the pre-internet days of software, to sell a piece of software, you would write it and then you would, burn it on CDs, put it in a box with a nice glossy cover on it and sell it. And if there was something wrong with it, if there was a bug in it, too bad. The users had to suffer with it until next year when the next version came out. And because there was no updates, no downloads. So that's a terrible way to write software, because knowing that any mistake is going to take a year to fix, you probably want to spend 6 months testing every aspect of it. You got to test it on people's weirdly configured computers and with other software. And it was such a grind to just make a simple piece of software that did something. So not many people wanted to be in that business. So, and certainly not me. So when Paul pitched this idea, we could write all the software on our Unix systems that we liked from using them in grad school and run it all on our own hardware and update it whenever we liked. To me, that's sort of what got me excited about it.